The Second World War reshaped the European continent through rapid shifts in military power, large-scale invasions, and the mobilization of millions of soldiers and civilians. When Germany launched its campaigns across Europe beginning in 1939, its early victories relied on speed, concentrated force, and a highly coordinated military structure. Poland was defeated within weeks. Denmark and Norway followed. By mid-1940, Germany had occupied the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France. These conquests delivered not only strategic control, but also access to labor, industrial resources, and infrastructure. As the war expanded, Germany developed a system to extract manpower from occupied territories to support its military industries. Factories needed workers, rail networks needed maintenance, and fortifications required construction. By 1941, the German war economy depended on millions of forced laborers drawn from across Europe. The invasion of the Soviet Union marked a turning point. Operation Barbarossa opened the largest front of the war and demanded unprecedented resources. The German military extended deep into Soviet territory, capturing vast numbers of prisoners. These prisoners became part of the forced labor system, assigned to construction, agriculture, mining, and war industries. Germany's manpower shortages increased dramatically as the war dragged on. Heavy losses on the Eastern Front reduced the number of able-bodied German soldiers available for industrial and logistical support. To compensate, authorities expanded forced labor programs to meet production demands. The German state established administrative structures to manage the transport, assignment, and supervision of these workers. Civilian administrators, military personnel, and SS units were tasked with organizing and controlling the labor force. By 1942, factories required around-the-clock output to sustain operations. Aircraft production, weapons manufacturing, ammunition plants, and synthetic fuel facilities relied heavily on workers brought in from occupied countries. Many were transported against their will, taken in mass roundups, or assigned as punishment for resistance activity. Others were prisoners of war captured during military operations. As the intensity of the conflict increased, the German leadership expanded the system further, integrating prisoners of war, political prisoners, and deported civilians into a labor network that stretched across Germany and occupied territories. The escalating Allied bombing campaign placed additional pressure on industries, forcing the relocation of factories underground or into isolated areas requiring new labor detachments. By 1943, the war economy was under continuous strain. Bombing raids reduced output, damaged transportation networks, and disrupted supply chains. Railways had to be repaired constantly. Factories had to be rebuilt or relocated. Labor detachments were assigned to these tasks under tight supervision. As Germany shifted to a total war footing, every available worker was expected to contribute. Forced labor became not only widespread, but essential to sustaining production. The demands increased again in 1944, as Allied forces opened additional fronts and advanced through Western and Eastern Europe. Germany struggled to maintain its defenses while simultaneously trying to meet the industrial needs of a collapsing war effort. The pressure on the labor system intensified further as manpower reserves dwindled. Many able-bodied men were sent to the front, replaced by older personnel, administrative staff, and individuals unfit for combat. These shifts reshaped the internal structure of forced labor supervision. SS units, originally established to handle political prisoners and internal security, took on expanded roles. They were assigned to manage labor detachments, oversee prisoner transports, guard work sites, and enforce discipline. This organizational shift brought a more rigid enforcement structure to forced labor operations. Supervisors were instructed to maintain work output at all costs, and harsh penalties for slowing down or resisting became common. As Germany began withdrawing from occupied regions under military pressure, death marches and mass relocations increased. Prisoners were forced to move long distances to prevent their liberation by advancing Allied forces. These marches were conducted rapidly, often without adequate food, water, shelter, or medical provisions. Supervisors were expected to keep groups moving and prevent escapes. Those who collapsed from exhaustion risked being left behind or shot. These conditions reflected both the disintegration of German military supply lines and the priorities of preserving forced labor capacity even as the war neared its end. It is within this broader wartime environment, marked by collapsing logistics, intensified forced labor demands, and heavy reliance on supervisory personnel, that individuals like Franz Bacher appear in historical documentation. Bacher, born in 1888, belonged to an older generation of camp personnel who were not frontline soldiers, but were integrated into the administrative machinery supporting the German war economy. His role was tied directly to labor supervision. When manpower shortages increased and forced labor became central to war production, individuals in his position gained significant authority over prisoners assigned to work details. Bacher served as a work and roll call supervisor connected to Dachau-affiliated labor detachments. After the liberation of Dachau and surrounding areas in April 1945, Allied forces documented conditions inside the camps and subcamps. They found overcrowded barracks, shortages of food and medical supplies, and evidence of mistreatment. Investigators compiled lists of personnel responsible for administration and supervision. Bacher was identified, detained, and subjected to interrogation. The U.S. military tribunal preparing cases for Dachau trials collected testimonies, reviewed camp records, and assembled evidence linking individuals to specific incidents. Bacher's name appeared repeatedly in statements describing violent enforcement and direct involvement in shootings. The topics we touch on this channel are very sensitive, so if you haven't already, please subscribe, like, and share this video to avoid YouTube's algorithm suppressing the video. Let's get back into the video. During his trial, the prosecution presented evidence that Bacher used his authority in ways that directly resulted in prisoner deaths. The tribunal evaluated his conduct in relation to command responsibility, a principle establishing that individuals in supervisory positions can be held accountable for actions that occur under their authority. The court considered whether Bacher carried out acts of violence knowingly, whether he had discretion to choose non-lethal alternatives, and whether his actions aligned with the documented pattern of abuse in the system. Witnesses identified him as a consistent participant in violent enforcement rather than someone reluctantly following orders. The defense argued that Bacher acted under instructions and that the conditions of the war forced supervisors to make rapid decisions during chaotic situations. This argument was rejected. The tribunal concluded that Bacher's actions exceeded any legitimate enforcement of regulations. His use of lethal force during the forced march and his involvement in executions of Soviet prisoners placed him in clear violation of international laws governing the treatment of detainees. The court ruled that he knowingly participated in acts that caused the death of prisoners, and that he bore direct responsibility for those outcomes. Bacher was convicted of war crimes and crimes against humanity. The sentence imposed was death by hanging. After the trial, he was transported to Landsberg prison, where executions were carried out for individuals convicted in the Dachau trials. On May 29, 1946, Bacher was brought to the prison yard. Military protocol was followed and witnesses were present to confirm the legality of the execution. The procedure was completed without delay. Official records confirmed the date, time, and completion of the sentence.